I am very glad to welcome Curtis Chin to our Bookish Resistance Club. Um, I know I don't look it, but my great grandmother was actually Chinese, and
Oh,
she came over from China with her parents to Peru. She immigrated, and I was born and raised in Peru. And
did
the central idea of your book really hit home because we absolutely love our local Chinese food restaurants. There is such a huge Chinese population in Peru, that there is a fusion cuisine, Peruvian and Chinese, called chifa. And everybody has their favorite chifa,
yeah.
and it's true what you say that you see everybody there. You see your neighbors, you see the mayor, you sometimes see somebody maybe a little famous. And, that's where you gather and that's where you get together. And that is where, you kind of figure out what's happening in your community. And I love that. I absolutely love that. So welcome, Curtis. Tell me about your writing journey and how this book came to be.
Wow. Well, thank you for having me on your show. I grew up, well, the title of my book is called Everything I Learned in a Chinese Restaurant. It's about growing up in my family's restaurant in Detroit. And given my background, I think it's kind of surprising that I'm a writer. I always jokingly say that, like, I didn't grow up around books. I didn't read. The only book we had was the phone book, right? I mean, but what was incredible about being in that dining room, working as a busboy, a waiter, a manager, was that I got to hear so many wonderful stories from our customers. And I think that is why I fell in love with the idea of storytelling. And so I was lucky. I went off to the University of Michigan. I got a creative writing degree, and that's what I've been doing professionally. For I don't know how long now, but it's just been a really, really wonderful ride for me, I think.
It is different. I used to live in California.
Mm.
Is, a lot more, of course, diverse and everything. And now I live in Wisconsin, where, there is the one, Mexican restaurant. And, to get Thai food, you have to go to the city because there really isn't anything
Where are you
super
at?
close by. I'm
Where are
sorry?
you? Where are you in Wisconsin?
It's known as Lake Country,
Okay.
and it's about, I don't know, 25 minutes west of Milwaukee.
Oh, okay, okay.
And so we're lucky that we have Milwaukee nearby when we want to, get some good food. And my son is going to university in Milwaukee now, and he's like, "Oh my goodness, I had no idea there were all these like different amazing restaurants over here." He's doing a culinary tour of Milwaukee now.
I was just
Um,
there in December
huh?
because I was just in Milwaukee in December because my day job is I do TV and film, but I'm making a new film for American Masters on PBS, and it's focused on a Chinese American artist from Milwaukee.
Very cool. I didn't know. I wish I'd known that, but that is so cool. I love that.
I'll let you know when it comes out because we're definitely going to do some events out in Milwaukee and Madison.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I would love to hear from you when that happens. Um, Tell me about your writing process. Do you sort of just collect ideas in your head and kind of write them down, or are you like very much, okay, now I'm gonna sit down and just write?
Writing is a full-time job. I mean, it really is a lifestyle. I mean, and when I say full-time job, I mean 24/7 full-time job, because ideas can come at any moment, right? And you have to be ready to sort of, in this case, whip out your phone and just take notes, right? Even if you're just walking downtown or you're sitting on an airplane or whatnot, uh, ideas come at any moment. I'm not one of those writers who has like a regimented routine, like, oh, I have to write from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. every day and da da da. I don't put that kind of pressure on myself. But with that said, I do generally write something every day, or I do a little reading, or I'm thinking. I do a lot of walking around the apartment thinking. I mean, I consider that writing. Yeah. I think when you start labeling, um, the aspects, the different aspects of writing, it sort of puts a lot of pressure on yourself, particularly like if you start saying, "Oh, I need to do a word count every day." I don't do that.
Yeah. Well, it's all part of the process, from getting the ideas to sort of editing them in your head and then putting them down on the digital page.
Yeah, everybody's different, right? I have so many writer friends who, have their own routine, their own rhythm, right? And some like to go away in a cabin for a month and just write. I have never done that in my life. I don't know what I would do if I was in a cabin for a month, but they swear by it, right? I have no idea what that's like.
I would love to go away to a cabin right about now,
Oh,
to
you
be
would?
honest. Just
Well,
like
you
get
have a
away from
lot.
everything that is happening right now. I would
Oh,
love
okay.
that. I think I would be okay. Take my books and my knitting, I'd be okay.
Okay.
Um,
Well, hopefully you get a fellowship then, or residency. I think that's what it's called, right? Hopefully you get a
right?
res.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a writer friend who, yeah, has this residency. I'm like, that is the dream. That is the dream. You just go and do your thing.
Yeah.
What is next for you, Curtis?
Well, my book was published by Little Brown in 2023. I end up doing, I think, about 250 events in person. Um, I'm taking a break in January and February to write the next book because I need to come up with a proposal to sell it. In the meantime, so I'm gearing up to start going back on the road in March and April. I'll be touring the US, but what's exciting is that I'm going to do a tour of Europe starting in May. And I think total I'll probably do 15, maybe 20. I don't think 20, but somewhere a little bit north of 15 events, including Oxford University, which is kind of
Oh,
cool. I get to talk at Oxford. Like that's so exciting.
oh,
I
that is
know.
the dream.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But in the interim, right now, I'm actually working on another film for American Masters, which I mentioned to you.
Yeah,
I'm working on that. I'm also doing work on a docuseries on the history of Chinese restaurants in America. So I've done a little bit of shooting on that and trying to raise funds for that. So, there's a multiple projects that I'm working on. So like I said, I feel very lucky to be in the position I am to sort of pursue the projects that I really care about and to do it, full time.
that's really cool. Who do you look to for inspiration? What other writers do you find, or other artists, doesn't have to be writers, um, do you find, inspiring that sort of feed you?
I was gonna say no one, but I don't mean it in that way of like being
No, no,
rude.
no, that's okay.
Uh, I'm just in my own head half the time. I do read other writers, particularly when I'm writing. Like when I wrote the first book, because I was new to it, right? I've never taken a memoir writing class. I've never taken a
Right.
creative nonfiction writing class. I've taken poetry writing classes, and I think I took one fiction writing class. But so the way I sort of learned the process or the genre of creative nonfiction was that I just read a lot of books in the library. Um, and I tried to read books that were sort of in the vein of what I was trying to write. My book is a coming out memoir. It's a coming of age memoir. So I read a lot of books about, which are focused on that time period in life, but also the process of coming out. The current memoir that I'm working on is it's set in 2005. At the time, I was writing TV for the Disney Channel. Don't ask me what show, but I was writing for the Disney Channel, and then I get this terrible phone call that my parents were in a car accident back home in Detroit, and my dad passed away, and my mom was severely injured, and my brother Chris, who's like the golden child in the family, he's like a doctor in Northern California, immediately decides that he's going to bring my mom out there to help her recuperate. By the end of that first week, all my other siblings, my four other siblings, all decided they were going to go out to the Bay Area too and help my mom recuperate. And I was sort of stuck back in Detroit, having to make this decision. Do I go back to Hollywood and continue this pursuit of trying to be a TV writer, or do I stay in Detroit and take over this fabulous restaurant that my great-grandfather opened in 1940? And so that book is called Leftovers. And so I'm reading a lot of grief memoirs at this point. Um, because it's something that I maybe I haven't completely processed about my dad's passing yet. And so maybe this journey of writing this book will help me.
Sorry to hear that. Yeah, that is a loss. That is not easily, I don't know if accepted is the right word. I know that my husband was a great rock for me when my father passed, and yeah, that's probably the most difficult time in my life, and I am sorry, you're going through that.
Well, I mean, it happened a long time ago, but it's amazing how grief, it's different for everybody, right? I mean, it could happen instantaneously for some people. For some
Yeah,
people, it's slow burn, you know, and there's a cultural aspect to it. And that's something I've discovered in terms of sharing these early pages, um, with these writing groups I'm part of. Um, it's interesting to me because a lot of the people, depending on what cultural background you have, you may or may not respond to the way I respond to it, right? It was interesting. I was in a session this morning, and there was a woman from Eastern Europe who was part of it, and she was like, as an Eastern European, I could totally understand the way you responded to grief. Um, because she was saying how like she had just turned in a piece to another group of Western Europeans, right? And they totally didn't get it at all because of cultural aspects she felt,
yeah,
right? Because Eastern Europeans are a little bit more by the book, I guess, which might be similar sometimes to some Asian cultures, very direct, very, you know, um, like moving on
yeah.
quicker.
What, if anything, do you hope that people take away from this book?
One of the reasons I wrote the book was I was really concerned about where our country was headed, like in terms of these divisions, which have sadly only gotten worse in the last 6 months. Um, you know, uh, we live in these little silos where we don't talk to each other anymore. And I felt like Chinese restaurants are one of the few places where people can still gather and you can see someone or meet someone from a different race, religious background, a different class background, different sexual orientation. And I sort of wanted to take that opportunity to sort of, you know, um, start a conversation about some of these issues, these very serious issues that we're dealing with in this country right now, about diversity, about race, about sexual orientation, about class. Um, but we have to be able to talk about it in a way that actually brings us together as opposed to drives us apart. And so the way I pitched it to my agent was like, come for the egg rolls, but stay for the talk on racism. Because we tackle serious subjects in the book, but we do it in a fun, humorous way. There's a lot of Chinese food in the book, which always makes people feel hungry and puts them in a good mood. So, um, you know, I think that's one of the things I wanted to come out of the book is like, a better understanding. The other thing too that I wanted people to get out of the book is that a lot of times when you read literature from people of color, sometimes you have a sense that it's like, oh, it's like an isolated story about that one community. But I made sure that with my book, I really tie it into the larger thread of what was happening in America in the 80s, because I want you to pick up the book thinking you're going to learn about this Chinese American kid in Detroit, but what you're really doing is you're learning about America in the 80s. And I think that, the book has been really praised by a lot of people because of that. And I know that my hometown of Detroit or my home state of Michigan has really, really embraced the book. I mean, not only did I get to give talks to like Ford Motor Company, the Detroit Pistons, the Lions, but it was named by the state library as one of the notable books about Michigan last year, and they've just invited me to come back and give the keynote this year.
Oh,
Um,
that's awesome.
yeah, the state of Michigan also just picked my book. They choose one book every 2 years for what's called the Great Michigan Read, and then they'll buy like 6,000 copies of the book and give it away to every school and library in the state. And so they picked my book for this
Oh,
year, which
that's wonderful.
yeah, it's really great. I mean, and I like to say that, as a kid who grew up in the public schools in Detroit and, the Detroit suburbs and never seeing my story or my family's story to now think that it's now being included as part of the record of Michigan history. it's just really heartening. So that I think about these younger kids who are now growing up and having access to more diverse stories where they can sort of see themselves, I think is just really, really, really wonderful. And maybe they will read more than I did as a kid, you know, maybe they'll
No,
find.
that is great. Definitely. I mean, I worked a lot of book fairs when my kids were in their, in their younger years. And, you don't see, like, I didn't see anybody who looked like me on the
Yeah.
covers of the books. I'm like, okay, I guess, I don't get to save the world, or I don't get to fall in love, or I don't get to, do any of these things. But no, that's amazing. That's great.
Yeah.
That's wonderful to hear. Well, thank you so much, Curtis, for taking the time. Really appreciate it. We're going to share this book with the Bookish Resistance Club. And best of luck. And please keep me posted about your other projects and when you're going to be in town next.
The artist is named Warren King,
Okay.
Warrenking. So look him up. He has a really fascinating story. His family, his dad was an engineer. They moved from Taiwan, and his dad helped build like a Brewer Stadium in Comiskey Park, like as an engineer.
Okay.
But he forced his son to go into engineering, to follow in his footsteps. So Warren went to MIT and then Stanford Engineering, came back home to Milwaukee, and you know, didn't really like that work, got frustrated, eventually quit, which led to some tension between him and his dad. But then when his wife got this really great job in Sweden and they moved away, he took it as an opportunity to sort of reinvent himself. And as he was, sitting in their apartment, he noticed all these cardboard boxes flying around, and he just started playing around with them. And now he creates these wonderful life-size figures out of cardboard. So look him up. I think you'll be really
Yeah.
at his artwork, you know.
Okay. Very
Yeah,
cool. Is he still over there in Sweden?
no, they moved back to the United States. They
Okay.
live in New York. His wife works at Netflix. She's, an executive there. But he has his first showing in Milwaukee, first gallery showing, I think in the fall of this year.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's in Madison. It's going to be in Madison.
Okay. Yeah.
So
It's
you
about
should
an hour
definitely,
away. That's all right.
yeah, look him up. Warren
Yeah.
King.
Okay. Will do.
Great.
Well, thanks again. Really appreciate you taking the time, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.